This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.
Welcome back, Jonathan Clark. We are in the studio with a guy who has a new album out called Shine a Light. It's coming out March 1st. Also, Pretty Woman, the musical on Broadway now. He wrote the music and lyrics with longtime musical partner Jim Vallance. The soundtrack to that is out now, too, on red vinyl. He's a multiple Juno Award winner, Grammy Award winner, Oscar nominations, so much more. He's on tour all the time. All the tour dates, bryanadams.com. How are you, man?
Good morning. Good morning.
You're looking fantastic.
Thanks. It's early.
I don't know what your secret is, but maybe it's the vegan diet. I don't know.
It could be.
It could be. You have been doing this pretty much your entire adult life now. When you write a song at this point, do you know if it has that, for lack of a better term, infectious hook or melody that just will not leave your brain? Or do you...
Oh, I know that for sure.
Do you, like, when you know it, like when you listen to playback in the studio, just like that's people are going to remember that?
Oh,
or...
I don't know that. I know if it'll stay in my brain.
Right.
But I don't know if it'll stay in anybody else's.
Because that's what I'm talking about, the song Shine a Light, because
Right.
I can't get that chorus out of my head, man.
It's a quite infectious chorus.
It really is.
Well, I hope it does. I hope people hear it. It's one of those things that I have no idea nowadays if people will hear the music or not. But, it doesn't stop you from creating. I mean, this last few years has probably been the most creative output I've ever had in my life due to the fact that I've put out this new album in March and also Pretty Woman, the musical, because it's to write for an album. We wrote probably 15 songs,
right? And
then for the musical, we overwrote that by a mile. We wrote probably there's 20 something songs on the record, so we probably wrote 35 for that. So imagine that's 50 songs in 2 years.
Yeah, prolific.
That's
some
an
might call that.
Extraordinary output.
Maybe that opens you up to more creativity. The fact that you're writing weirdly in different ways. And...
Yeah, it does. But you also have a mission every day if you're working on a musical, because you know that you have to deliver this by 4 o'clock, and it's 10.
Tighter schedule.
10
right.
a.m. You got to go and sit and write it and make it happen.
Well, Shine a Light, I know the backstory on that is I think you had the chorus.
Yeah.
And then you sent that to Ed Sheeran. Were you looking for lyrics or music or both, or whatever he offered?
Well, in terms of my songwriting, I've always been sort of the kind of person you'd want to jam with, because I'll definitely come up with a decent mumble. But on my own, I usually come up with fragments of songs. And so when I met Ed and we started talking, I thought, I have this idea. I think he would know where to take it, or maybe he'd take it somewhere I wouldn't. And that's what I'm interested in. I mean, back in the 90s, I did a lot of songwriting for film, and most of it was with Michael Kamen and Mutt Lange. And the three of us we wrote some beautiful songs, but it was mostly because of the fact that because we're all three very different songwriters, and the chemistry created something unusual. I mean, I never expected that as a young songwriter that I would be having a flamenco guitar player on Have You Ever Really Loved a Woman?
Right. And then Everything I Do was also...
with Michael as well.
Yeah.
So we wrote, an All for Love for Three Musketeers. We had some big songs together. And I think it was the unusual chemistry of what someone else would do. So, I mean, I know what I could do. I mean, I could probably finish it if I sat down. But I'm quite interested to see where you take it.
Right, exactly.
And that's why I sent that to Ed, because I was like, I bet he'll come up with something. And sure enough, he did. And
it's interesting because Ed is, I guess, 27 now. And when you were 27, your careers are kind of very similar, because lots of success early on in your lives. And you've always had an awesome band. And Ed, he keeps the overhead low. It's like him and some machines and some loops, I guess, right? It's amazing what he can do with that.
So clever.
Yeah.
That's why I went and saw the show, because I was curious to see how he was doing it.
Yeah. You and Jim Vallance have done the music and lyrics. We're talking about this for Pretty Woman on Broadway at the Nederlander Theater. And this took a while, I guess. I think it was 2 years, you said?
That's correct, yeah.
You and Jim worked on this, and a completely different approach to writing music for actors to sing and to act, right?
Correct.
I mean, a real challenge for you, or just...
Yeah. Yeah,
a
totally.
welcome, inviting challenge.
Well, both, I'd say. I mean, I didn't really know what I was getting into because I'm new to the Broadway thing. However, I had an experience working in film, for example, with, say, Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron, which was an animated film at the beginning of the 2000s, where it was creating the little stories for each vignette of the film. So I knew that it would be kind of similar to that. And I knew about the rewriting that went along with that as well. Like, sometimes you'd come into a room, there'd be 20 people, the directors and the producers, and put the song up, and you go, okay, look, everybody, demo disclaimer. Okay, this is just this is just a demo.
Right.
And they go, okay, let's try it in the picture. And so the same thing would happen in the musical. I'd get the song, sit down with everybody, and we'd say, well, he'd say, let's just try it, and they'd give it to the actor, and she'd learn the song off the paper, and musical, arranger would be there, find the right key for her, and within an hour, he would have created the director would have created not only the sort of the wedging of the song into the play, but also started the choreography. So it was all very interesting.
Well, it's interesting the way you talk about. I think when Bryan Adams is in a studio recording a Bryan Adams album, it's different than like. With the Broadway show, do you have somebody next to you that's charting out musically on musical charts
Yes.
things that you're doing and maybe even creating at the moment? Like,
yes.
Okay. And you probably don't do that in the studio
Well, actually, not when you're creating. When you're creating music, you do that in a I call it the Broadway budget hotel, and then you go from there to the rehearsal hall on 42nd Street, and then you sit and present your music and present your song. And it's from that moment that it starts to get into the score.
Right, yeah.
And if it actually gets past the rehearsal stage, at that point, someone will start going,
typing it out, charting it out.
putting it in the chart, and then because then you have a band. Oh, look,
An
there's
ensemble,
and that's
right.
like, that's one of the lines in the song. That's one of the lines in the musical. Oh, look, there's a band.
Pretty Woman on Broadway we're talking about with Bryan Adams and, of course, his new album, Shine a Light. So when you get all this done, you see, I guess, during rehearsals at first, other people singing your songs along with acting out the script. What was that like the first time you saw that happening in front of your eyes?
Really, really fun. I have to tell you. And even towards the end when we were all quite exhausted and we'd spent years working on this, it was never dull. In fact, I'll tell you a story which is great. There's a song called Luckiest Girl in the World, and it was the last song written for the musical. We wrote it in Chicago. We knew we had to fix this one song. It wasn't working. So I came back with Jim and I were scratching our head. I went away for the weekend, went and saw my daughters, and I was saying, you girls are the luckiest girls in the world. I thought, that's it. That's an idea.
Boom.
And so I came back and we wrote the song. Okay, so imagine this. Song was from idea to finished composition was done by lunchtime. So morning, started in the morning, finished by lunchtime. Then present the song after lunch because they have a break. So that's when you do that. You present the song. Then from that moment on, the song is given to the actor. And then in rehearsal, they do rehearsal at 4 or 5 o'clock. She learned the song and then performed it that night.
Wow.
That is how Broadway works.
That is, yeah.
I was absolutely floored by, because Samantha Barks is the singer in the show, and I walked into the rehearsal at 4 or 4:30, 5 o'clock, expecting her to be reading it off a lyric. She'd memorized it. I said, "How did you do that?" She goes, "That's what I do."
Right. Professional. And then recording the soundtrack with the cast, too. That's another monumental task, I would think, right?
That was a big
You
job.
produced it, and
That was a really big job.
Recording studio here in New York? Or?
Yeah, we recorded it at Power Station,
Okay.
Which is an old home ground for me.
Oh, yes.
And
54th Street, right?
Listen, I was so happy to be back in that studio. It was just, in fact, I used to make records with Bob Clearmountain there back in the day, so I immediately sent him a photograph of standing in the room with him. And
they got a nice big room there, too, right?
It's amazing. I'm so glad they kept it. Berkeley bought it.
Right, I remember that, yeah.
So, yeah, we made the record, but you have to imagine when I make a record, I have sort of unlimited amount of time to figure out what I want to do.
Yeah.
with a cast album, you have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of budget, and you have to do it. You have 20 songs to record, and you got to record it in 2 weeks. So basically, we were just slamming it.
Beatlesque.
Very much. And you have a union guy standing over saying, "You've got 10 minutes left."
Don't touch that microphone.
No.
Yeah.
You've got 10 minutes left with this singer, and then you have to stop, or it goes into the overtime. And so, okay, so run it down again.
Right.
And then pick up a couple words. Okay, good. Thank you very much. You're next. Bring on the next guy. And that's how we did it.
Oh, fantastic. I follow you on Instagram. Lots of cool
Thank
photos and videos of you and your travels and concerts around the world. But also, you are a vegan and have been for a long time now.
30 years.
Yeah, that's a long time. Is it hard to maintain that? I mean,
No.
people always say, when you're switching to that sort of vegan lifestyle and diet and everything, it's hard to get the food or whatever, and prepare and sort of
Look,
change
I'm
your
gonna
world.
I'm going to make it really easy for you.
Okay, please do.
It used to be really complicated 30 years ago, or more complicated.
But being in a band on the road.
No,
I mean,
easy. If you don't have a complicated, if you're quite simple, which I am, it's not difficult. I don't mean simple like, I mean simple like I just don't really want for much. And so, with the diet, it's the same thing. It's like just eat fresh food. It's easy.
Right. But finding those places, like
No.
in remote parts of
You
the
can always
world.
find it. You can always find it. You can find it. It wasn't so easy before, but it's way easier now. America has set the trend for veganism around the world. I mean, it's extraordinary what's happening.
It's not like you have to plan ahead.
No,
and,
and
do
it's
all
not,
this
and it's
stuff,
not
like-
looked, and it's not frowned upon as much. It used to be like, oh, well, I'd say, would you like to come for dinner? Well, I said, well, I'm a vegan. And like, oh.
Yeah, people talk about that, like going on dates with a vegan person.
No,
as
the
opposed-
worst person you could go for dinner with, is a vegetarian or a vegan, especially when you're going to restaurants, because most restaurants don't really cater to it.
Right.
But a lot of it's changing. The paradigm's changing. In fact, I saw a thing this morning about an ice cream in Australia that they call Magnum. They've suddenly done a vegan alternative with vegan chocolate and everything, and it's kicked off a huge storm because the dairy industries are freaking out because they're saying, "Oh, this is going to cut. Yeah, it's going to cut you. Who wants to eat that garbage? Just cow pus."
Right. So if you're a New Yorker, where do you go? Tell me a grocery store. Where should I go?
You go to Whole Foods.
Whole Foods and just
You can go You know what? In New York, you can go anywhere. And New York's fantastic for it.
Yeah.
And California.
right.
I don't know about Kansas City. I haven't been to Kansas City, but I'm sure that it's changing. You know what? You couldn't get avocado on toast for anywhere, 10 years ago. Now you can get it everywhere.
Bryan Adams is with us. The new album, Shine a Light, and of course, Pretty Woman, the musical on Broadway now. He wrote the music and the lyrics with that. The soundtrack is on red vinyl now.
I want one of those copies, by the way.
We got to get that, man.
Yeah.
First single, Shine a Light, the title track to the new album. There's a video to go along with that.
Yes.
And it has you singing, or images of you singing on street signs and billboards
Right.
in what looks like New York City.
It is New York City. I shot it at Christmas time.
Oh, okay.
I did it all myself.
Really?
Yeah.
Well done. I mean, it looks like an iPhone commercial or something
It's
almost.
crazy, isn't it?
It's
No, I just went out with a friend of mine and we just had a camera, and just like the lady here, and just put it on a tripod and just filmed it.
And there's one scene of you in a phone booth. Those are very hard to find now.
That phone booth is on the. Where is it? It's like just off West Side Highway.
Oh, so it's kind of down here, sort of, right?
Yeah, it's off West Side Highway. It's probably somewhere like below 14th Street, somewhere down there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, maybe even down here, like by Canal Street. But it's along one of those in the warehouse district.
I'm sure this has happened to you when you walk into a bar or a club and the DJ or bartender knows that Bryan Adams walks into the club. Does the person put on Bryan Adams? Like,
Oh, it used to happen.
right.
Yeah.
Is that a good feeling or a weird feeling?
I'll take it.
And the same question to like when you're driving in your car, you walk into Whole Foods or whatever, and then a Bryan Adams song comes on. What goes through you? Do you remember the session when you record? Like, what happens in your brain when you hear your song somewhere?
I think, aren't I a lucky guy?
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Bryan Adams, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.